Good morning. This is my lecture on empathy and system thinking. I'm Sonia Massari, and I'm the director of the Future Food Academy. What is system thinking? It's an approach that identifies the interaction between different elements of a system. The system can be a city, society, a community, a sector. And the important part is that it's ensured that they deliver more than the sum of their parts. There are many ways of representing the systems. All of those that you see in the slides really works. But when I started to identify how the systems works in the food context, I realized that one of the most important competences we need is to develop the empathy and the system thinking together in a mindset. In the book, Transdisciplinary Case Studies on Design for Food and Sustainability, that I published in 2021, I was able to collect many cases in which design was used to create systems that successfully worked and were able to change the food system, the food habits, and the food culture. It is true that the system thinking is not a new concept. It comes actually from the 40s, the 50s, when the technology, the ICT, the information technology, was in a way developing different way of using system theory, specifically in the cybernetic and more recently in the artificial intelligence. Practically, through different flow, it was able to identify that the system really works when the flow are connected and are able to progress in. The system theories as a dynamics of the system started in the early 1920s, thanks to the fact that an biologists realized that this is not possible to explain anything in the biology phenomenon as not as part of a system. All of the interaction we have, if we think about our body, ourselves in the natural systems, we definitely are talking about systems. It is only in the 1960s that system theory was used also in other fields like sociology, management, psychology, and law, so in the social sciences. We had to wait Miss Forrester, who was able to use the system theories to apply this in the concept of systemic dynamics that was developed inside of the MIT in the United States. And the main idea was, if the computers works well because of the system thinking, we use this kind of system approach also in the industrial business cycle. And in this way, we will be able to predict any kind of problems or any kind of difficulties, and we will be able to progress the business in a more efficient way. We had to wait later on, Donella Bedeau, who was one of the learners from Forrester, who decided to apply the concept of the system thinking in the sector of the ecology. Practically, Donella was able to see that if we are all going to connect resources, birth, death, food per capita, pollution, services that we have it, and we bring all together those, we are able to define how the ecology and the integral ecology can be defined through the systems. So if it is true, 50s and 60s cybernetics disciplines and sectors were able to use more in a way efficiently the idea of the system thinking, it is also true that after a few decades, the system thinking approach became more popular also in other disciplines. What is really true is the fact that we all live in systems. Everyday life, we learn every day how to work, how to study, how to move ourselves systematically. And many times we always say at the Future Food Institute that if we are trained since we are child, in our childhood, we can actually, if we're trained to see and to move and to work with system, definitely we will be able to face the complexities in the adult much better. So systems are all around us. As you can see from this very simple infographics, also our cup of tea or a cup of tea or cup of coffee, it's actually in reality a system. If we think about our cup of coffee, we have to consider the water, the electricity, the waste collection, where are we going to buy it in the supermarket? And if we think about each of those items, there will be another circle that really introduce other systems in and so on, till considering the government departments and the connection we have through our cup of tea and the systems that really represent economically, environmentally, and socially, where the cup of tea was and the ingredients in the cup of tea were produced. So the ending of this first introduction is that we are a system. We used to work in systems, but definitely we don't have a very good expertise and a lot of competencies on working in system thinking. So we need to practice. And definitely we can learn how to practice system thinking. And this can help us a lot to interconnect systems and in a way to evolve, to develop the situation and the context in which we are. More in depth, the system thinking is very important, specifically when we want to work in sustainability and innovation. The method of thinking in a systemic way really give us invaluable proofs of the fact that we can solve the complexity of the situation. We can find problems in, but definitely we can find opportunities behind the problems. And this is very important. Many times, the people are asking me if I have a good example in terms of system thinking and system dynamics. And if I do have a good example of design applied to the system thinking. I used to show this specific example. Let's watch this video together. As you can see from the presentation, this is a very good example in which the systems was studied and they were able to identify how to create a new food system. Let me explain this better. In this case, the problem was definitely the fact that the plastic, it is considered a problem because it is many times eaten by the animals because they believe there are other fishes. But what happened was that a designer and a producer of beers decided to work together to figure out how to modify the system, not simply make the ring used for the beer as a biodegradable rings, so by using a materials that could be more sustainable, but most importantly, materials became in a way the way of how we can feed the animals. So the approach was not only simply working on the problems and find a solution, but also to introduce an opportunity, which is the one very important nowadays, that is to feed correctly in a healthier way the animals that are in the ocean. It is quite interesting, the video, for many reasons. We see the system from different perspectives. We see the system as different professionals that are working together. We see biologists, we see the fishermen, we see the CEO of the company, but also the consumers are part of this co-design of the new approach and the new system. We also see the system differently as a kind of investment. So from one side, the CEO that realized it and was in a way demonstrating and sharing with everybody the fact that this is an investment. To invest in sustainability, it is nowadays a very big point, but on the other side, he can see the future behind and see the difference that he can create. So again, this is not simply there is a problem, there is a solution, but instead there is a system that can be transformed, can be resetted by including different competencies, different disciplines, different solutions, and most importantly, only through the system it is able to make the change. A single person, a single actor in this context cannot make the change. We really need a multi-actorial approach to make the difference. So by going through, sorry, I was still in. I came out in the book I mentioned before, Transdisciplinary Case Studies on Food and Sustainability, through a toolkit that each innovator, each person that works in the food sector should have. This toolkit is called Empathy Systemic Mindset Toolkit and includes 6 main competencies: the cognitive flexibility, the creative approach, the circular vision, the transdisciplinarity, the superpower of design, and the emotional intelligence. Let's go to see one by one each of those competencies, also through some example. The first, cognitive flexibility, means to give values to invisible things, or better, we can call all of the resources around us dormant resources when we are not able to give them values, and to modify them from simple sources to resources, and most importantly, to opportunity for the social innovation and for the innovation we want to create to systems. The cognitive flexibility is really important and help us to review what is inside of the system. To introduce this, I'm going to talk briefly about a project of design that I've been studying, that it really represents the idea of the way of working in terms of systems and the way of changing systems, how much is important that. This is the case that is going to narrate the stories about lionfish. The stories come from the 80s, so from 1985, when there was a big hurricane in Florida, United States, and through the hurricanes, many fishes that were in the aquariums were able to get the freedom by going to the ocean. So by getting this freedom, the point was that the lionfish, so this fish that is not an autochthonous fish, so it's not actually coming from the Caribbean Ocean, but instead it comes from the Asian Ocean, didn't find any predator, because this fin that he has in his body, it's full of poison. And because of this poison, he was not able to find any predator, but he was able to reproduce himself, becoming a really big problem for all of the coasts of the south of Florida, but also the north of the Colombia and all of the island that were in a way surviving by an economy based on fishing. And the main business were based on fishing and hospitality and tourism, so restaurants as well. So the lionfish became a problem. The lionfish was in a way impacting economically on the life of the fishermen who decided to go back to the land to find a job. It was very strong impacting socially, because the fishermen were able to bring all of their family to the land, leaving the island, the North Island, for example, of Colombia, mostly desert. And this was really a problem economically, because it was impacting all of the business that were on the island. And third, it was a really big problem environmentally, because the coralline barriers that were based there couldn't survive the attack of the lionfish. It was definitely a systemic problem. An idea of to see the problem systemically. And this is very important. We need to see every time we analyze a problem, what kind of impact systematically this problem can produce. What happened was that designers were involved by the government in Colombia to work in some of those islands in the Caribbean Ocean. And through a systemic approach, through cognitive flexibilities, as I mentioned before, they were able to see some resources that before were only considered like a problem. So they saw in the fishermen potential co-designer to co-design new equipment for fishing the lionfish, because lionfish, it's actually meat and could become an important resources for the economy of those islands. But you cannot force anybody to change food habits or to change food practices without getting them involved in the process of co-design. And this what happens through a competition. So the to the fishermen of the island to participate in the competition to win for the best, for the biggest and for the smallest lionfish. Through the competition, the fishermen were able to learn how to fish the lionfish and how to use those fishes by losing the poison, because in an hour outside of the water, the lionfish loses his own poison in the top. So this was a problem that became easily an opportunity, because the fishermen became heroes in that. The fishermen felt themselves as heroes, able to change the systemical problem. Second, they decided to work with the chefs, and through the chefs, they were able to change the way of perceiving the lionfish meat. The lionfish, you have to understand, that was considered like the evil, and using the meat of the lionfish was not considered ethically, and it was not culturally approved. So what happened was that the designer helped the chef in what they really needed, which was the use of the social media, by asking them to use food stylists and different social media practices, but only if they were able to cook lionfish meat. And this is what happened. And definitely through cooking, the chefs understood, the local chefs understood that the lionfish meat was really nutrient, was really tasted, was really good, and they really liked it. So they started to cooking and to experiment with that. Third, very important point, was actually dedicated to the women, and the that participate to the cultural life, the social life of the community, were able to change completely the perception, the negative perception about lionfish. And this is another really key point, systematically, where the women were able to find opportunities for opening a new business in their life was very important, because they were able to learn how to use their own expertise and their own competencies for creating necklace and earrings and accessories through the different materials of the lionfish. Now, with the video that I'm going to show, you will see the story narrated. So definitely it's quite interesting to see how the lionfish became not only a product that could be used, but also potentially a very good attraction and appealing product for tourism and for the hospitality of the area. It is true that nowadays there is a website that reconnect and is able to give also instruction on how to cook the lionfish, and also support the restaurants that serve lionfish everywhere. As you can see, the importance of applying and understanding the system behind a problem was not only important for finding solutions, but most importantly for different actors in the co-design of the future. In this case, fishermen, the restaurant owners and the chefs, but also the women and the part of the community and the social life that are related to that were included in the process of the co-design, the collaborative design. And this is definitely, it's a good example of system approach. Most information can be also proved by an article that we wrote, me and Professor Lorenzoni, and this can be helpful for you to better understand the story and the systemic approach applied in the ideation and in the execution of the lionfish innovation. The second competence, as I want to talk about it, in this empathic system approach, this toolkit I mentioned before, is the creative approach. The creative approach, the creativity helps to see the problems as opportunities. So to help the problems to become opportunities, but also how to identify the driver of change. The main difference between the business thinking and the design thinking is the fact that in business, we try to see different problems and to solve all of them in one solution. Mainly in the design thinking, we apply a completely different method. We used to say that we apply an abductive thinking in which we see different kind of layers of the problems, and through that we understand that there are different opportunities that can be evolved in ideas and innovation. So this definitely helps to apply the creativity to go through innovation. So as we see, that's another example that helps us to identify that is not simply the idea of to find, as in this case, the fact that the packaging can be done with the materials that otherwise can be wasted. In this case, we have some packaging coming from the waste of rice and the waste of olive oil. But the most important thing is the fact that this can give a new systems to work on. And these systems can be, in a way, accepted culturally because it seems to be the best system to be applied to our life in a healthier and more sustainable way. Or as in this case, another very good example I want to propose in terms of system is the farmer fridge, for example, an ideation, an innovation that came by analyzing how difficult it was to find almost 10 years ago good and healthy food in airport and train station. The idea was to provide a machine that was a vending machine that was able to provide fresh food every day, and this fresh food from the producers around airport and train station. But the best and the most important part about this vending machine as a system was also the second part of the story, which was the ideal circularity that the vending machine was able to create, because all of the food that was not sold during the day in the vending machine was then recollected to be redistributed and given to the people who need it through charity and organizations that were taking care of food security and food poverty all around the airports and around the train station, which are considered nowadays the places in which the food security level is very high. So that's another good idea of systems, because they were able to solve one problem, which was healthy food in airport and train station. But meanwhile, by activating this vending machine, they were able to apply through creativity, new systemical innovation, able to create impact socially, economically, and environmentally. Let's go to the circular vision. The circularity means not only to simply see the relations that are part of the food sector as linear and predictable, because they are never like that, but instead the food system, it is better represented by this kind of system you see here. So means that there are a circularity that include many little circularities in. And to better understand the system, we need to be able to identify all of those circularities and to exalt them, to give them extra value, or to connect them when they are not connected. Only by through good analysis of what are those circularities in our food system, we are able then to connect the dots and to create systems that will work better. Finally, transdisciplinarity. Transdisciplinarity as a competence is the ability to govern the long-term and short-term effect on our and other actions. So being able to grasp different perspective in time and space, but also to break and broaden spatial and temporal horizon. It's very important, the transdisciplinarity, because it's able to connect the science and the academia, the government part, so the public part, and the industry, by taking care of the environment that connect all of those three sectors together. As a transdisciplinary approach, we suggest us not to work only in a multidisciplinary context or an interdisciplinary context, but instead try to exchange lens of investigation, lens and different approaches for then working to the next steps together and always win-win solution. Then the superpower of design. Design as an ability of finding complexity, understanding complexities, and by using participatory approach and design methods to be able to find solution. Many times we find solution by analyzing context in emergency situation. Uh, for example, this is an idea of system that was created, for example, in 2015 by the collaboration of an expert in agriculture and a designer. And the idea was to create an island, an artificial island that could feed two families in case of a catastrophic event or in a very terrible scenario in which the land appearing and all around the world there were only water. It seems to be very utopian and very futuristic as a scenario, but in reality this was a project that inspired many young innovators who find out many waters environment in each of the cities where they were living. So think about big cities like New York or Buenos Aires, where there are like big rivers or the ocean very close to the city. If we see the problems and as a system, we can see opportunities that otherwise can be hidden and can be not very visible. So they can be invisible to us. But if we see them as a system, we will definitely realize that, for example, a kind of artificial island like this can become an opportunity, can become a way of getting floating farms in the river or floating farms in the ocean around the cities. And this will be a very good idea for maybe creating a production that is kilometer zero, very local, to feed the cities. As we know, feeding the cities is nowadays one of the key problems we have. And finally, let's go to the last competences I want to describe as part of this empathic system thinking toolkit, which is the emotional intelligence. The emotional intelligence is the way and the opportunity we have to work with empathy, motivation, and getting agency. So practically working and see not only what is very visible, but what is usually not visible, which means beliefs, perception, condition, experience that are most of the time covered by what we see in front of us, what we say and what we do. So the emotional intelligence means able to go through the values and understanding systematically how values is going to impact our behaviors and also our way of living. So the system iceberg that I presented in the slides before, which is maybe quite popular and very well known to you, can be in a way reversed. And when we are able to see more concretely what is usually hidden, so the mental model or better the mindset model we have, we are able to create and build new structures that are able then to create better pattern towards sustainability and finally making sure that unsustainable events don't happen anymore. So as you can see, their impact and the way how we can work with also in this case is systematically defined. So let's actually summarize again what are the 6 competencies that I believe are important in the empathic systemic design toolkit and mindset we need: cognitive flexibility, creative approach, circular vision, transdisciplinarity, superpower of design, and emotional intelligence. I really thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoy the lecture and see you soon. Thank you.